What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy, and so shortly after releasing my recent video on cutting back and that kind of stuff, I had a follow-up thought, and in summary, the basic idea of that follow-up thought was, maybe I kind of put this out there all backwards, because how often do you have somebody cutting back on things without an idea that it's going to have some particular effect? Whether that's, like, say you're, on a diet and you plan on cutting back on something with the idea that, you'll lose some weight. Or, maybe you're spending too much time on a particular hobby and not enough with your family, and so you think cutting back on that hobby will give you more time with your family. Now, maybe from like a business or company standpoint, there might be an idea of cutting back on things just for the sake of profit. But even then, there's an idea that, hey, we could save some money by cutting back on this stuff. It's extremely rare to have somebody, or even a corporate entity or anything like that, it's extremely rare to have cutting back on things without an idea of something to then fill in what's being cut back on, or at least, some sort of goal that's going into the idea of cutting back on things. Because if you don't think that things need to change, then why would you change them? So, I'm not gonna, retract my statement from the cutting back video, because I do think from time to time we need to look at things that we're doing, whether out of habit or just because they're things that we kind of enjoy, and, examining those things, it's not a bad idea, but, like I said, it's rare that you're gonna actually cut back on things without there being some end goal in mind. It's something good that you think is going to result from cutting back on these things. Like, for me, I even mentioned kind of in that video that, maybe if I cut back on some certain video games, I might be able to put more time and effort into the YouTube stuff. Now, I'm not going to say this applies to everybody, but I think in most cases, it's generally more helpful if you have some sort of an idea in mind of what you want to add before you start cutting back on things, because why else would you cut back on something if you don't have something else to fill that in? Like, I wasn't thinking I was going to cut back on video games just to have more free time, which I would then probably use on playing more video games anyway, so what's the point? Related to that specific idea, I'm not saying that having more, unscheduled free time is a bad thing, especially, if you've got a family or a friend group, or, people that you might be able to spend more time with. But again, there's already that kind of idea that maybe if I cut back on this thing, I will have more of this. And, I guess there's a completely different, probably full-length video that I could make related to how much we keep ourselves busy. Even during our free time, we feel like we have to fill it in with things sometimes. I'm not going to get into that right now, because I could spend a whole entire other video talking about that kind of thing. So maybe for some people, you need to just start looking at things that you're doing, analyzing, or thinking through how well they're going or what they do for you, how they help you in some way. And maybe if you're thinking through that first, then you can kind of have an idea of things to trim down, and then maybe you could come in with some goals or things. Maybe you realize that, okay, I've got this thing going here. It's pretty good. I might actually want to do more of this. And I see here that I have this other thing that, yeah, it's okay, but I could cut back on it to do more of this thing that's even better. So I'm not going to say that, oh yeah, I've got this completely wrong, that you have to have a goal in mind first before you think about cutting back on things. But it's a lot easier if you're, especially if you're not thinking through it methodically, that it's a lot easier to motivate yourself to cut back on something if you have the idea of, adding something else or, reaching a certain goal. And, maybe it's better for you to think about the goal first and then think through what you want to cut back on. Or maybe you think about the stuff you could cut back on first, and then you realize within that, after you've thought through what's okay and what's maybe better than okay, ways you could sort of manage or realign your time within those to do more of the stuff that's good or at least better than some of these other things that are okay, but you could cut back on. So that was the general gist of my follow-up thoughts on that. And I just thought that might be a helpful addition to that previous statement of cutting back. Because again, it's kind of difficult for many of us to be motivated if we don't have that goal in mind. And honestly, sometimes doing things without a goal in mind, it can bring about some questionable results. I'm not saying it's always going to, but if you're just doing something for the sake of doing it, and you're not really trying to think through carefully how you're going to benefit from it, then you might end up doing something, I don't want to say that you'll regret exactly, but you might, in this case, you might cut back on something and then just feel like you're bored or like you've got this hole in your schedule or something, and then you end up filling that with something that's even less helpful or less productive. In summary, if you've got this process of, or this idea of cutting back on things, I would advise maybe you make this somewhat of a two-step process. Either think through your goals and things that you want to do, and then go through the whole cutting back thought process and see what things maybe you could shave off in order to give you more time and ability to reach those goals that you've created. Or maybe you look at the cutting back aspect of things, look at what you're doing, what's good, what's not so good, and then see how you can redo or perhaps even eliminate some of the not so good to make the good better. But I think there's got to be, generally speaking, it helps if there's kind of that dual action, if there's both parts in that process, if there's, kind of the create the goal and then cut back on things to make more room for the goal, or maybe there's the, okay, think about cutting back on things, but then maybe before you actually do the cutting back, look at how that stuff could be changed or altered to do less of the stuff that's not so good and more of the good stuff to possibly make it better. Kind of almost then coming up with goals as you're finishing up that cutting back thought process. Anyway, I guess that's it for now, because there really isn't too much that I had in mind related to this idea. So, if you find this helpful, possibly, or if you have certain thoughts related to this, maybe other suggestions for people to follow as they're contemplating any New Year's resolutions or things to change in their lives or whatever, leave comments down below. And of course, like, share, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Just look down in the description for different ways to keep up with my channel and interact with my social media pages and stuff like that. So, that's going to do it for now. I don't think I'm going to be doing any further follow-up on this general idea, unless somebody comments with something that they think is helpful, and then I could talk about that. I don't know. But for now, I think that's going to be it related to this topic. So, next time, who knows what's coming up. But I hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video, whatever that ends up being. But until then, stay cool, people.